the help of Hashem, we are learning Megila, Daf, Chav, Vav. We are beginning the fourth and the final chapter of Megillah, B'nai Ha'ir. Just to be aware that in Mishnayos, in your Mishnayos at home, in the Mishnayos here in the Shul, the Seder of Masechtas Megillah is that B'nai Ha'ir is the third chapter, and Koira Oimed, what is in the Gemara, the third chapter, is the fourth chapter. And there's a reason why in Gemara it's reversed. Don't forget that Koira Oimed is primarily focusing on the reading of the Torah, and the beginning, at least, of the fourth chapter, B'nai Ha'ir, as we will learn, is speaking about the following. When the city owns items that are holy, for example, a shul, or certain holy items in the shul, and they are sold. The Mishnah is not focusing what justifies selling it, but when it's sold, what does one need to do with the money? And this is the rule, Mailin B'Kodesh V'loy Moridin, that in sacred items you only go up in holiness and you do not go down. So the Mishnah is going to enumerate various levels of Kedusha, and to make the point that when you use the money, you have to buy something, you have to acquire something that has even a greater level of holiness. Now I want to speak a few nekudas bekitzin about selling holy items, especially if they belong to the community. And the Gemara is going to say this very clear today on Daf Chavav on the bottom, that there are two things we have to keep in mind. There is something called Toivei Ha'ir, which is translated in English as trustees or communal representatives. In many cases, they are elected officials. In some communities, we used to have 5 elected officials. They're called the Chamisha Toivei Ha'ir. In other communities, you have 7 elected officials. We're not going to focus in on why 5 and why 7 is at the size of the city. And we just learned in last Pedic these numbers that they have mystical significance, 5 and 7. The Chamisha Roye Pnei HaMelech, the Shiva Roye Pnei HaMelech. But they're city trustees. When a sale of, let's speak about a shul, happens through the trustees in the presence of the townspeople, not that everyone is there, but it's done in public, that gives the sale the greatest level of legitimacy. That, as the Gemara will say, is not the case of our Mishnah. In such a case, when one is allowed to sell a shul, the sale is so final that the place no longer has Kedusha. Parenthetically, still, the purchaser may not do in the area that used to be a shul, activities that are considered very degrading, like having a bathhouse, having a bathroom. But the Kedusha actually leaves. Not only that, but the money that the community got no longer needs to be used for Kedusha items, nach Mailan B'Kodesh. The Mishnah is speaking dafka about a scenario where a shul, let's say, is sold, either by the trustees, but not in the presence of the town people, or by the town people without the involvement of the trustees. I know this is very bekitzed, but this is the way it is. That's the case of our Mishnah. It's a binding sale, it's not an illegal sale, but by the fact that not everyone was involved in the sale in an active way, that's why the shul remains with a higher level of vestige of Kedusha. And more importantly, which is the focus of the Mishnah, the money is mamish holy money. Loi paka Kedusha in Aramaic. The Kedusha did not go away. And therefore, you have to use it not only for holy, but for a higher level of Kedusha. Let's leave it at that. This is such a rich and practical topic. Like always, we are not learning Shulchan Aruch. There are so many different ways of learning the sugya, and mamish min hakotza lakotza. Okay, but we're learning now. We're quoting the pshat of Gemara Rashi of what we're going to learn here in Daf Chavav. We're going to learn other side dinim that we actually learn many times together concerning Yerushalayim. Whether Yerushalayim halachically is considered a city that's divided amongst the Shvatim, or is Yerushalayim considered a city that belongs to all of the Shvatim. Obviously, before David HaMelech, conquered and chose Yerushalayim, and God chose Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim de facto, we know, was divided amongst the tribes of Binyamin and Yehuda, that no one debates that. But once we established Yerushalayim as being the capital city, question is, does it revert to be a city that belongs to all of the Jewish people, and we'll see a few nafkaminas lahalacha, or does it remain to be a city that's divided part to Binyamin and part to Yerushalayim? That will be connected to our sugya. Reb Shmuel, that's not the Shmuel Levi. There's a Reb Shmuel that holds that a urban shul may never be sold. Only a village shul may be sold. There is a foundational machlokes and tosfos as to why all these things touch on all communal affairs today. When people learn the first daf today, both of our ears are always up. They did this and they did that, and they were not allowed to do this. This is the source of a lot of geschmack conversations in a community. And on daf chavav amid beis, we're going to learn another foundational concept that we quote many times, that there is a huge difference between tashmishe mitzvah, an item that's halachically categorized as a accessory of a mitzvah. For example, a shofar. The mitzvah is to blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah, or the mitzvah is to hear the sounding of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But to do that, you need the shofar. So it's the accessory of the mitzvah, tashmishe mitzvah, which is awesome. But after the mitzvah is done, there is no vestige of kedusha on the tashmishe mitzvah. Therefore, you can discard it, even though we don't discard it disrespectfully, like a tzitzis. It says in Shulchan Aruch, put it in a bag and put it in the garbage. You don't have to do geniza, you don't have to bury it. But something that's in the category of tashmishe kedusha, it's an accessory for kedusha, which is connected, we spoke it out, to items upon which Tanakh scripture is written. Like an example, a bima upon which the Torah is read, it has a higher level of kedusha. It's considered tashmishe kedusha, and over there, even when it's not being used for the kedusha, it's considered something holy, and it may never be discarded. It has to be goynes. You have to do geniza. And now, what is a shul? So there's a certain step, even though it's called a tashmish de tashmish. It's an accessory to an accessory. We're going to learn our sugya, and this is a big machlokes rishonim, that a shul is considered tashmishe de tashmishe. It's not called tashmishe kedusha, which is also why, like we mentioned in the intro, and we'll repeat it once in the Gemara, that if you have both the city trustees and you have the city in the presence of the townspeople, if a sale was made of the real estate that was a shul, since it's not called tashmishe kedusha, that's why, like we mentioned, the kedusha leaves that location. If a shul would have been viewed as tashmishe de kedusha, then you would not be able to take the kedusha away. And I think we touched upon at least the main points of today's daf. Very important daf halacha l'maisa, because it is common that in the communal property is sold. It happens very often. Normally, in the ideal world, you sell it to buy something better, bigger, and better. And that's not only about a shul. A sefer Torah can be sold. Sometimes the sefer Torah got old, and you want to upgrade your sefer Torah. I mean, who has the right to sell it? So again, just remember, at least, even though the Mishnah doesn't write these words, that whenever a sale is done by the trustees in the presence of everyone, the money is not even holy of a shul. That's the general rule. Our Mishnah is speaking about a sale happened legitimately because it was done by the trustees or by the townspeople, but they weren't all together. And because of that, it's not a full sale in the context that the kedusha goes onto the money. And that's why you have to now use the money, Ma'ila Ma'kodesh, says the Holy Mishnah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu malachim sha'akolim v'dvarim. Bnei ha'ir shemachru rechayva shalir. Rechayva shalir means the town square, and there is really a machlokes tanoim whether there is some little level of kedusha in the town square. Why would it be kedusha? Because we learned Masechtas Tainis, right? Sometimes when there was a big fast, and the later fast days when people did not fit in the shul, they would daven in the street. That means on occasion it's used for the gatherings to communicate to God. When there's a maimed, it's done in Rechayva Shalir. So our Tana follows there is a certain amount of kedusha. So if it's sold, again, Bnei Ha'ir means not with the trustees present, so therefore the money remains holy. based on the rule of Mailan B'Kodesh Olay Moridin, so what's one step up? Loikchin B'Damav, only add the words, guys, only a Beis HaKnesses. Now, I want to add right now Machlokes from Rabbeinu Ephraim and Rabbeinu Yoina, which is not mentioned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is always going to give examples of you have to use the money for something that has a higher level of Kedusha. Can you use the money to buy something that has the same level of Kedusha? It's not spoken in the Mishnah. And the expression, you go up and you don't go down, if you buy it on the equal level, your taka didn't go up, but you didn't go down. That's the big machlokes. The Rabbeinu Ephraim holds that it's usher to buy something of the same level, dafka up, and the Rabbeinu Yoina holds you can buy it of the same level. The example, Sefer Torah, a shul has, every now and then they find a psul, halachically it's still kosher. The shul can afford to buy a better quality Sefer Torah, the community can afford. Can you sell, this Sefer Torah to buy another Sefer Torah? That will be a classic example. If you hold, like Rabbeinu Yoina, it's not moiridin, then you can do that. Okay, let's go over here. Same thing. Beis HaKnesses, if you sold the Beis HaKnesses, again, since it was not done by the trustees in the presence of the town people, the whole Mishnah is that way, the way we learn it. That's why the money has Kedusha of the Beis HaKnesses, and therefore you have to use it for something even holier. What's even holier than the walls, than the real estate? Teva. Machlokes. Teva for sure means the ark, what we call the Aron HaKodesh. Many Rishonim hold that Teva also means what we call the Bima, because that's direct for the Sefer Torah. If a Teva is sold, what's even greater than a Teva? It's interesting. Loikchin mitpachos. Mitpachos is what we call in Yiddish the mantle, which is the material by the Ashkenazim that we put right around the Sefer Torah. Right, Sfardim have another. They are machabed the Sefer Torah by having it in a beautiful box case. But let's go. Mitpachos is a mantle. If you sold a mantle, we're just going up. So what's even holier than the mantle? Daf Chavav Yikchu Sfarim. Now here Rashi points out Sfarim means Nevi'im and Ksuvim. Nevi'im and Ksuvim, they were written on parchment with ink rolled in a scroll. And if they sold Sfarim, what's the highest level of Kedusha in a shul? Nevi'im and Ksuvim. Here, like Chin Torah, you buy a Sefer Torah. So we went Milmata Lamaila. Now we're going to go in the reverse.
So Sefer Torah is lower than Sfarim?
No. You sell Sfarim, you buy a Sefer Torah. Avol in the reverse. If a Torah was sold, don't buy Sfarim. You see, you can already see, you can see the words of Rabbeinu Ephraim and Rabbeinu Yoina arguing. It means you can be medayek, you can make an inference from the Reish and from the Sefer and coming to the opposite conclusions. Because here it's mashma, if you sell a Sefer Torah, don't buy Sfarim. Which is mashma, if you sell a Sefer Torah, you could buy a Sefer Torah. From the Reish of the Mishnah it says that when you sell a Sfarim, you can buy a Torah. Mashma, that when you sell Sfarim, you can buy Sfarim. Anyways, that's the question here. Sfarim leikchu mitpachis. Mitpachis leikchu teva. Teva leikchu Beis HaKnesses. Beis HaKnesses leikchu Eser HaChoiv. And there's many mystical reasons. Mamash al pi Kabbalah. Why Rabbeinu HaKadosh needed to do this? It's mamash, it sounds like you're reading Sefer Yetzirah. You're going up and you're going down. Then the Mishnah adds one other detail. V'chein b'moisroi seyem. Moisroi seyem means leftover money. This is a big topic. So let's go with the Rabbeinu Yoina. We have a Sefer Torah, and we wanted to make it better. We sold the old one, we the shul, and we bought a new one. For whatever reason, the old one survived the Holocaust. It was an art piece, who knows what. We got for it $30,000. We found a new Sefer Torah for $28,000. One might have thought that since the bulk of the money, it's not about the bulk, it's about the concept. Since the money was used kedasu kedin, or according to the Rabbeinu Ephraim, we sold nach, and we bought a Sefer Torah. We did that transaction. But now there's up to $1,000 left over. So you can argue, now we're good. You're not good. That even the leftover money is continuously bound with this rule of Mailan B'Kodesh V'Lo Moridin. So it really limits what the community can do. Again, I want to say for the final time, but according to the way we are learning Gemara, not everyone paskins this way. If the sale was done by the trustees in the presence of the community, there's many more freedoms. That's a correct statement. Mamish. If not, a community cannot move, because there are times that you have to make sales. And what are you going to do? Like if you go with the Rabbeinu Ephraim, so what should you do with the Sefer Torah? Never sell it? So in America, we're a wealthy moment in Golus. Say that some people needed to sell it. So what would you do? And so there's the practical. They need another one, but there's leftover money. So again, according to many's understandings of our sugya, that if everyone was involved in the sale, then there's a lot more freedom of what you do with the money. Okay, says the Gemara.
Nowhere does it mention like salaries. Like pay a rabbi salary, pay
no, because
operations.
But here you're not selling anything holy. The question is, when you sell the rabbi, what do you do with the money? Depends on the rabbi. That's what's not discussed there.
The rabbi's waiting for the offer.
All right, good, weiter. No, I just want to answer Danny's question. That monies that were designated for tzedakah, that goes into the general question that we're not going to learn. We have this in Bava Basra and in other sugyas. Can you change the allocation of the tzedakah money? That's another topic. So, no, it's money that was raised by a community.
Shuls have like 36 Torah. They don't need them.
They don't need them.
And you sell them and use that money for operations.
So one thing is clear, Danny, the way we're learning the Gemara, not only for operations. If the sale was done by the city trustees in public, then you can do with the money whatever you want. Mamish. Of course, for the community, because the community would not agree to that. Okay, let's go weiter. And then there's other dinim for opinion, shvuyim, for achnos, whatever. Let's go weiter.
You rent a shul?
We're going to get to renting a shul today. It's a big problem. We'll get to the problem with renting a shul. Okay, says the Gemara. In other words, the first step was that the town square has a certain amount of kedusha, because the issue was a kedusha issue. So if you sold it, you have to buy with it a Beis HaKnesses. Aman Abba Bar Bar Chana, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, that our Mishnah is only following the words of Rebbe Menachem Bar Yosi, who is the Situm Ta'a. That means that many anonymous statements written by Rabbeinu HaKadosh is quoting this Rabbi Menachem. He is like the anonymous author. Aval Chachamim Oimrim, and actually we paskin like the Chachamim that Harochayv Ein Bei Mishum Kedusha. There is no sanctity in the town square, even though on occasion it might be used for gatherings of Kedusha, and therefore when it's sold, if it's sold, you're not bound by this rule. You can do with the money whatever you want. Now guys, when I keep on saying whatever you want, it's not hefkerwelt, not whatever you want. It's communal funds. That's what Danny mentioned. That's another topic. The focus of our Mishnah is not what's communal funds and how limiting, like do you have to use it exactly for its designation. Here we're learning about the cloud, that if there's a Kedusha aspect, aside of the communal aspect, the Kedusha aspect, if there's Kedusha there, you have to use it according to the Rabbeinu Ephraim, only to go up, or according to the Rabbeinu Yoina, at least to keep it on the same level and never to go down. Rav Menachem Bar Yosi Maitama, Hoyel v'ho'am espalel boy, when there's a fast day and people don't fit in the shul, or when there's a big maimed gathering, that's why it has a certain level of kedusha. And the Rabbanon, which is not even mentioned in our Mishnah, that gathering is akroi ba'alma. It's only something occasional, and occasional doesn't imbue the place with kedusha. These are big topics. Let's go weiter. Beis HaKnesses, if you sell a shul, you can buy with it a teva. Teva means an ark. Or again, Rabbeinu Yoina says that a teva means what we call a bima. Also, an ark or a bima. Omar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Omar Rabbi Yonasan, Lo yishanu elo beis HaKnesses shel kfarim. What synagogue b'chlal can be sold? Who gave you the right to sell it? Now we're going into real politics. Where's to the balabas? So if it's a rural synagogue, now I'm going to learn the second explanation of Tosfos. There's not enough time to go through all the different approaches, and nor do I know them. Tosfos, the second top Tosfos, the last wide line on top of the Gemara says, it has to do with, Chavre, listen to these words, who paid for it? A rural synagogue, no one from the big world even knows it's there. So it was purchased by the locals. That gives them a certain amount of ownership over it, and therefore when they consented, they can sell it. Aval Beis HaKnesses shel karachim, again, according to the second view of Tosfos. In big cities, urban cities, who comes there? Many people come. And when you're building, they also give money. It's not about the amount. But since the monies came from the world, not only from the locals, so everyone is the owner. You would need their consent, which you don't have. You don't even know who they are. You can't sell it. Even the ma'alma asulei, again, according to one way of understanding, it's about money. Guys, there's so many different ways of learning it. Let's just take one derech. Then leimotzu mizabni lei, because the havalei dirabim, it belongs to the rabbim. You know, your verb is to the balabas. So you can't say 1 second, but you have the trustees that were elected, and let's go not the way we're saying, and it can be in the presence of the townspeople. So what? The townspeople, the people are not the only ones that paid for it. Let's follow this mahalach. Even so, there's an exception, which is very important. All of these things are huge. Amar Ravashi, Hani bekenishna the Masa Machasya. Ravashi was the Rav in the big shul of Masa Machasya. Let's go with Tosfos. You know who gave money to that shul? Every Jew all over the world. They made a charity campaign. But you know what people gave money? They gave money because Ravashi was the rabbi. They gave it because of Ravashi. It's as if it's a given. Listen to this, that since they gave it to Ravashi, Ravashi has the right to make these decisions. You see, the source of all politics is this line, Hosto. So every Rav says, they gave the money because of me, so if I want, I have the right to sell it. Huge. Okay. Same concept. Let me apply this with. This is not in jest. Like here, we have a big schus. We have someone like the Rosh Hashiva here, the Rosh. The Rosh is the Balabas in Yoek, and everyone who gave money there knows that. Okay, and they know that they're giving it to him. He's a giant, and if for whatever reason he wants to sell this building to buy the other building. 100% okay. I don't want to mention other names who for sure feel they're the same way, but I'm saying there's certain people that you gave, even though you don't even know who gave the money, and even if it's about who gave the money, if the Rosh Hashiva Ravashi has the right. Meisvei Amar Rav Yehuda, it says in Abraisa, Meisvei Beis HaKnesses Shel Tursiim. It happened in a synagogue of copper refiners. It was so common that in shuls, people that shared the same profession either built their own shul or they sat in the same place, as we learned. And by the way, from here you see, and I'm saying this in a positive way, of course, during davening we should not talk. But there is a very important social part of a community. Because if the shul would be the way certain puristic people think, oh, I'm only going there to talk to God and no other garnished, we're not going to fabreng there, we're not going to socialize there, then why would there even be such a phenomena of having a synagogue of those professionals? Who cares? A synagogue of people that live in this square radius, this square mile. No, it doesn't work that way. The shuls were built, since we are from the same social world, we gather together. Yeah, of course, the ikir to daven and to learn, but also we have more in common. So there was a Beis HaKnesses, 4 copper refiners, that was in Yerushalayim, and shemacharu le Rabbi Eliezer, they sold it to Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer used that shul for whatever he wanted, which proves that the sale was a bona fide valid sale, because if the sale is not valid halachically, then all of the original kedusha remains in the location. And what's the problem? That city was in Yerushalayim, and Yerushalayim is Krachim. So how can you, Rav Shmuel, say that if it was bought, if it was a shul in a urban location, so the presumption is everyone paid for it, even people from other locations, you can never sell it? So the Gemara says, Hahi beiknishta zutehava ve'inu avdua. Even though it wasn't a large city, it was a small shtibel, and it was taka only built by these copper refiners, which is why it was called the Beis HaKnesses of the Tursiim. So it's not a psaza magic if it's in any urban city. What Rab Shmuel meant was, if it's a big city shul, it can be in a big LA, lahavdil from Yerushalayim, but if it's a little shtibel, let's go all with this mahalach. That since we know who paid for it, and it's based on the size, the bigger it is, the locals normally can't afford it. You need to get outside people. If it's a small little shtibel servicing a certain niche, and you know the local people paid for it, then they have the right to sell it. Meisvei, It says in a Braisa regarding the rules.
Like a young Israel, or like Beth Jacob, it's such a big shul for such a big community.
Like the Eden Project, it's such a big shul for such a big community that makes it much. You're much more limited if you can ever sell it, even if everyone who davens in there agrees. Let's go right. Meisvei, it says in a Braisa, the base eretz achuzaschem, guys, in Parshas Tazria, when we're speaking about the laws of nigei batim. So all of the laws, these miraculous types of blemishes that would come on the exterior part of the walls of a house, with all of the halachas that it entails, all of those halachas are only if that house is in your inheritance. It's in the land, in a house, in eretz achuzaschem, in your inheritance. Says Torah Shebal Peh, only achuzaschem, then metame ben goyim. Ve'en Yerushalayim metame ben goyim. Yerushalayim is not considered the land of yours because Yerushalayim belongs to all the Jewish people. So even if there's going to be over there all of the signs of tzoras, it's not a house that's afflicted with tzoras. Hold on. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, that ani lo shamati, I disagree with that rule. I only heard that rule only makai migdash bilvad. Only if there's tzoras on the Beis HaMikdash, there is where we exempt the Beis HaMikdash. Now what does that imply according to Rabbi Yehuda? Notice he's arguing with the Chachamim. It's not the whole Yerushalayim, it's only the temple. Okay, only the temple. But all of the other synagogues, all of the other houses of learning in Yerushalayim, mitamin, they are included in the dinim of tzoras habatim. The problem is, let's go to the same rules. Guys, what does it say? Eretz achuzaschem. That tzoras is only if it's yours. Rab Shmuel is beginning with the premise that a synagogue in a large city is not yours. It's also everyone's. So that should also exclude all the batim nesiyas, batim midrashes. Amai the kracham havu. So answers to Gemara, you're right, you just have the wrong version. Ema Amar Rabbi Yehuda ani lo shemati ela makai mekudash bilvad. He doesn't hold that the whole Yerushalayim is exempt of the dinim of tzoras, because he holds that Yerushalayim, as we'll see, does belong to either Yehuda or Binyamin, and to the people of their tribes. But he meant to say that any synagogue and any shul, and he doesn't only mean Yerushalayim, it also would mean in any large city. According to the second understanding of Tosfos, another detail, any synagogue that was built by funds beyond by those who pray in it, you don't even know who they are. It was built with a big campaign, then it's not yours. And now that we touched upon this machloikis, whether Yerushalayim is included in the dinim of Tumas Tzoras or not, is it your inheritance or not, this is the machloikis. Very interesting. Now guys, when we conquered the Holy Land, before we knew that God chose Yerushalayim, everyone agrees historically that initially it was divided between Yehuda and Binyamin. No one debates that fact. Just understand how what happened. But once David HaMelech established Yerushalayim as our capital, and it's our capital forever, there are those who hold that a capital city means a city that has no owners. It belongs to everyone. Now what does that mean? It means that if you bought a house in Yerushalayim, imagine you're living Bisman David HaMelech, does it mean that you lost, that they took away your ownership? It doesn't mean that. What it really means is, this is important, is that even those who hold that Yerushalayim belongs to all the tribes, it means that during the time of Aliyas Haregel, when everyone was obligated to go to Yerushalayim, at that time, you were not allowed to charge rent for people staying in your home. You still had the right to tell, I don't want you. Everyone would, on the other hand, would have to have a guest or more. You know, Crown Heights is the greatest role model, the most hospitable city in the world. When the Rebbe was here, you had thousands and thousands of people come there for Tishrei. Again, no one forced you. I'm sure there were certain Yechidim that had no guests, but some Yechidim had 50 people taking over their house. No, it becomes an open city. During that time, everyone is the balabas. You can't charge. And so some people wanted to circumvent it by saying, I can't charge for the real estate, but I'm going to charge for the bed. The Chachamim outsmarted you about the people who wanted just to charge for the furniture, as we'll read inside. So, but Michael Mifligi, what's the machlokes in the Chachamim? Tanakama holds that Yerushalayim, from when it was established as the capital for the Jewish people, forever, it's no longer considered property of Yehuda and Binyamin, at least certain times in the year. So therefore, it's not achuzaschem. It's not your land. It's not mamish yirda. That means if you imagine, guys, if you have a house, everyone should be zoicha. It's a good thing. Buy a piece of real estate. If you are able to, Hashem should bless you. When you own your house, if there are certain times of the year that halachically you don't own it, how do I know you don't own it? It's not that you lose all balabatishkeit. It's not hefker welt. But if you have a person staying in your house, you don't even have the option of charging him or her rent. It's during the times of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. You can say, I can't have people. But if you're having people for free, that means you're not a full balabas. And Rabbi Yehuda holds, no, Nischalka Yerushalayim L'Shvatim. The division that they made remains. Okay. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, we're focusing now on the Makim Migdash itself. What part of the temple was on the territory that belonged to Yehuda? It clearly belongs to Yehuda. Harabayis, and the Lishkois, and the chambers, and the Azarois. The Ulam, it's amazing, the holiest parts of the Beis HaMikdash was Bechalke Shel Binyamin. So Ulam, Vehechol, Ubeis Kache Kache. So now if you can picture the Beis HaMikdash in your mind, so you have the eastern part and the western part. So the westernmost parts is Binyamin, the easternmost parts is Yehuda. Where's the boundary, where's the border? Right around the Mizbeach. And if you remember, and we're going to learn this again, there's a machlokes as to how, but on the southern and on the eastern side of the Mizbeach, there was hardly a Yesoid. And the reason why there was hardly a Yesoid, according to the way we learn here, Gemara Rashi, that's because the Mizbeach needs to be Bechelkoi Shel Binyamin. And it's not that the border between Chelkoi Shel Yehud and Chelkoi Shel Binyamin is a perfect line. It didn't work that way. Mamish, if you would have made the Mizbeach's base symmetrical, then the most of the southern and most of the eastern side upon which you would have the base would have been on the territory of Yehuda, and we don't have that. So, that's the line where people get tripped up. Shuki, this means that if they would have built a Yesoid on that strip of land, it would have been on the Chelik of Yehuda. So they did not build a Yesoid, thus guaranteeing that all of the building of the Mizbeach is exclusively Bechelkei Shel Binyamin. None of it on Yehuda. And why was he Zoicha v'hoye Binyamin not tzaddik min stayro la kol yoyim levoyle? Binyamin was not comfortable. He wanted to absorb that strip of land. You know why? Because he was afraid they're going to build a Yesoid. He wanted to have all the mitzvah as chelik. Shenemer, as it says, that's the meaning of the pasuk over there at the end of Vayechi. Choyfev olav kol yom. Choyfev is, what's it called, a helicopter parent. Choyfev means you're hovering. It means he agonized it. He was looking at it. It bothered him. And you know what? That's a nice thing. We reward him. The fact that he wanted that mitzvah so badly. You know what he was zoicha? Not only did he get the mizbeach b'chelkoi, but the Holy of Holies, the Ark, was also b'chelkoi. He became the host of the Shechina. Now let me say something like this. People can think that it sounds selfish. It's not selfish. Because the mizbeach represents our avodah. The Ark represents God's coming into the world. Binyamin was not agonizing, I want to be the host for the Shechina in that sense. That's selfish. Why would he not want to share it? But when it comes to my efforts, my avodah, Mizbeach is our avodah. Binyamin says, I'm in. I want to do the avodah. That's beautiful. So people that are ready to do the work, they're zoicha that when the good things happen, the Shechina comes into the world, it comes into your chelik. And that's the way it is adayem hazeh. All of the people that have these beautiful mitzvahs, they do avodah. They want to do the avodah, they're zoicha to host the Shechina. Now,
just to clarify, the Mizbeach was in Yehuda or in Binyamin?
Clearly, the Mizbeach was only on Binyamin. And clearly, this whole Tana holds that Yerushalayim was a portion to the Shvatim. You understand? Because if it wasn't the portion to the Shvatim, it's not Yehuda, it's not Binyamin. V'hai Tana Sovar. But the next Tana, so we have clear, that's a Tana. But we have another Tana that holds, where do we see that? Where do we see that? The Tanya, Ein Maskirim Batam Yerushalayim. And here's where Rashi makes the big point that when the Jewish people when our grandparents, and as we, when Mashiach will come, will go to Yerushalayim during the Aliyah Haregel, no one was allowed to charge rent. Obviously, that's because Yerushalayim loin is chalka l'shvatim. Because if Yerushalayim is considered bona fide property of whoever lives there, then why can they not charge rent? We can ask of them not to charge rent. You can't force people not to charge rent only if they don't own it. Not only that, Lefisha ein shalahem, it doesn't belong. Lefisha einam shalahem. Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok Omer, don't be oiber chachem in Yiddish. Okay, the apartment doesn't belong to me, but you know what? My bed belongs to me. I'm not charging you rent for my apartment. No, I'm charging you rent for the bed. No, afloi mitois. You needed to speak it out. Can't even charge rent for the beds.
For food.
For food, you could charge. You can charge, and however, even though you're not charging any money for the real estate, lefikach oirois kachim, we went there. So by a carbon, the hide went back to the owner. Leave it by the host. So he can't charge rent, but mitzat sheni, you went into his home, leave him a gesture, make a gift. Lefikach oirois kachim, balei oishpizin, the hosts. Noitlin oisen bizroya. A little bit more, I said it wrong. They take it. I'm curious to know if you would have paid them rent, maybe the rent was cheaper than leaving them the hides. That's what the Gabbai says. It's better to pay for certain things. But what comes free, what's the expression? Whatever is free costs more money. Right, in Chabad we don't charge memberships. Oy do you pay, oy gewalt. It's much better if I pay my dues. They get everyone this way. Okay. Omar Abaya. Shma mina, that urachara, that it's good manners. Lemishbak inish gulfa, you should leave your guest. A guest doesn't pay. Leave your jug of wine, or end umashka, your hide. People had hides. Leave. In other words, if you're not being charged, it's only menschlich for you to leave a tip. But how do you know that? Because they took it bizroya. I'm happy Abaya didn't say shma mina, that you can bekoyach take a tip. Abai didn't say that. Okay. Omar Rava. Now what we kept on quoting in the introduction, and we're touching the tip of the iceberg mamish, is this Rava. Omar Rava, that the ganze Mishnah, the whole din of the Mishnah, that the proceeds only mailen bakoidish. And I'm linking the fact that the proceeds have to go bailan bakoidish is also connected to the fact that even the item itself is not fully removed from its kedusha. It's only because you didn't have actively everyone present. Who's everyone present when you make a sale? So again, there is the people themselves, a public sale. Everyone who wants can be there, can see it, and the trustees are there. When they're all together, says Rava clearly, 7 doesn't have to be 7. Make it very clear. It was just common that you used to have 7 trustees. But if a city chose to have 3 trustees or 5 trustees, if the trustees, they are elected. Guys, we had elections all the way back. The elected people to represent us when it comes to communal funds, if they're doing it in the presence, then I'm going to turn to Amud Beis and I want to read Rashi back on Amud Aleph. The money can be used to buy beer, drink it away in alcohol, if people agree to it. Look inside Rashi, Daf Chavav Amud Aleph, turn back to the bottom. No, it's when from the brackets, if the trustee sold it in public, avol machru v'chulei, paka kedushim and achefetz. Rashi puts these two things together. The item itself, bechlal, has no more holiness. And here the shleima, umin hadamim, there is no holiness with the money. There's no rule you can only use it ma'alam ba'kodesh. Everyone agreed to the sale. Umuter lasois mehen kol ritzoinam. And let's stop over here. No, it's our whole Pedic is not speaking about an illegal sale, chas v'shalom. Our Pedic is either, that's the way we're going to learn, that the trustees sold it not in the presence of everyone, or that the townspeople says, forget about these trustees, we're just selling it. Could be they wouldn't even be against it. Could be they don't have the right to be against it, but they were not present. So that's why, on one hand, it's not a genev. It's not that the sale has no validity. The sale is a sale. But now there are many rules. There's a certain amount of holiness that was not removed. This is so general, but at least we're beginning with the general. This is Mamish Gemara Rashi. Okay, Daf Chavav Amebez on the top. A couple of stories. Ravina Havile Hahu Tila de Beikanishta. There was a Beis HaKnesses that was demolished. Either it was ruins or it was demolished. We're not going into who gave them the right to do that. And there was a pile of rubble. It was on the property of Ravina. Ravina knew that the community were completely miyayesh. They abandoned ownership in that pile of rubble. But hello, the pile of rubble, if there is still a vestige of Kedusha in it, you can't use it for your mundane activities. So what did he do? He went, this is Ravina and Ravashi. So also, Ravashi and Amar Le, he asked Ravashi, Ma'ul Mizra'ah. He wanted to plant, whether it was under the rubble, in the rubble, the stones, the remains would benefit Ravina for personal benefit. Now, if that shul that was demolished was sold, like the way Rava said, it was sold by the trustees in the presence of whoever wanted to be there, it was a public sale, then we just learned, then there's no Kedusha left. It goes both ways, Rashi says. Not the money you can do with the money, whatever the community decides. Drinking beer is not pashut. Why would a community use the money for beer? But if everyone would have agreed to it, then you can buy beer. That's the mashal. And then there would be no Kedusha on the stones at all. That the question here was, Samach.
They formed the Vada Kol in Crown Heights. Do you ever refer to them as the Shiva?
Yeah, Vishkoyach Samach. That's the way it always used to be. And that's why, and it always worked with elections. The only thing is that, yeah.
They pick him from every shul at the vote.
Yeah. That's the way. Tzemach, this is the sug. This is so important. And then you have representatives. And not only that, what did we learn today? That it doesn't mean that the trustees can do everything behind closed doors. If they do it, it's binding. That's our Mishnah. But if they do things in public, it's even better. Now, the reason why sometimes they don't do things in public, just practically, because many times then nothing will happen. It's very difficult to get everyone to agree. Our Mishnah is practical. You have representatives, and they found. Huh?
It doesn't say they have to agree.
No, I know that. In public, I know. I'm just saying, Danny, practically, what happens is that if you do it in public and someone who has a strong voice disagrees, it begins a whole. I'm not talking about halachic power. It's difficult. It's difficult to do these things by the representatives in public. Many people say, I don't agree, and then it begins a machloikas, which is why our Mishnah says, no, you appointed trustees, they're doing what they're doing. But there's some, then the trustees are bound by these rules. That's the Mishnah, that's our Perek. Anyway, so what should he do? So Amalei, so Ravashi tells Ravina, no, Zil Zavne Mishiva Tuva Yoir B'Mamiran Shoir. Even though it was abandoned, Ravashi knew that rubble, I don't care if it's worth $1, go to the representatives in public and buy it from them. Because when a sale is made, a shul is holy, but if it's made by the trustees in public, again, going back to Rava, then just like Rava says, you're not bound by Mailan, by Kodesh V'loy Moridin, the money can be used for beer, that's Rashi, one is connected to the other. Then the item that was sold also has no more Kedusha. And then you can do whatever you want with it. Since it was not done by the trustees in public, even though the people in the city abandoned it, it's like the townspeople selling it without the active involvement of the Tuva Ha'ir. So then there's still Kedusha on it. There's still Kedusha left on this. You can't use it for your personal use. Next story. Rami bar Abba, Hava Kabani Bekinishta, he's building a shul. And Hava Hahi Kanishta Tika, there was an old city in the shul that he was replacing. So now, what did he want to do? It's another topic. When do you have the right b'chlal to sell a shul? See, we did not speak about it now. You can't stam sell a shul. We're going to actually see that if there's only one shul in the city, you may not sell it until you have the new one. That's another topic. So what he wanted was, he's building a shul for the community. The old shul will become abandoned or sold. He wants to take materials from the old shul to build it into the new one. He wants to save on bricks. He wants to save on beams. Oh, there's one problem. In order to take the bricks and the beams, you have to demolish the old one. So Hava boyi lemistere, he wanted to demolish some of the old building. Ula asuye, to bring both the livnei, the bricks, ukeshurei, and the beams, minei, from the old one, ve'ayulei lahasam, and build it in the new one. But Rabbi wanted to know whether you're allowed to do it. So Yosef became boile had Rab Chizda. He what's the issue? That which Rab Chizda said. What did Rab Chizda say, which is maybe or maybe not connected to our case? Rab Chizda loy lister beiknishta ad the mivne beiknishta achriti. B'chlal in a city you may not demolish the old one until you build a new one. But hold on, you know why? There, we're not speaking about using the old materials for the new ones. Stam, you're going to demolish a synagogue, we're going to build a new one. Maybe you won't, or maybe it's going to take too much time, and in the interim there won't be a shul. So Rab Chizda's statement is clear because of pshiyusa. People might not do the right thing. You know, it's expensive to build, it's hard to build. So Rab Chizda is saying practically, you want to demolish the old one? Fine, first build a new one. First have new location and then get rid of the old location. But that's Rami's kasha ki agavna mai, because since he's taking the beams straight into the new one, he knew himself. He's taking it out of the old, putting it into the new. Maybe that's not a problem. For the interim, there will daven in Shleima's house. I'm saying because you're middle of building. So also the comment of Papa v'asar can't do it. Now, do you go heter shopping? Normally you don't. He did. There's a man. So he went in front of Rav Huna.
Did you tell Rav Huna that you went to Rav Papa first?
Dan is correcting me. He went to. Very good. It makes all the difference in the world. Now we know. Okay, good. So the same concept. So and v'asar that's it. At least he only went shopping twice. He got 2 isurim.
Not building can take years.
But I understand. You understand, Rami. It's so expensive, and why not? And we're using it for the shul. Like all of the logic. Whoever is in building, it's so difficult. No, they told him he can't do it, and that was that. Okay, weiter. Amarava. Hi, Beikanishna. Where David asked that question before. We're going back, guys. This is so important. According to the way we're learning the case of our Mishnah. We're not learning the case of Rava. We are not learning the case of Rava again. Whenever something is being done by the trustees in public, there is much less restrictions. But the case now is, it was only done by the trustees, let's say. It was not done in public. Chilufam. If they took a part of the shul and they bartered it, they exchanged it for something else, an object for an object, or vizabuna, they sold some communal property for money. The question now will be, did it remove the kedusha of the old? And if it was done by the trustees in public, yes, Rashi says the money you can buy beer with it. That's what Rav is saying. And the location, like in the case of Ravin on top of the Amid, you can plant your field in it. But here we're speaking about the case of our Mishnah. The case of our Mishnah means it's a binding sale, it's a binding exchange, but by the fact it wasn't done by the trustees in public, there is still kedusha connected to the money. There is kedusha connected to the old location. So he says, Shari oy goira, you can rent the old location. You can rent the old beams. You can rent it. You know why? Because even though it wasn't done like we mentioned, b'shivitu v'ya'ir, b'fnei anshe ya'ir, it's a sale. A sale is final. That means that the trustees are not planning to go back to the old. Here also, the old can be used for personal use. But umashkoina, I'm sorry, shari. Chilufa v'zabuna, if they exchanged it or if they sold it, shari means that the new people, right, can go in there and they can do whatever they want. But oigoida, if they only rented it or if they mortgaged it, a person is paying a lease. What does both the type of mortgage that we are speaking about means? That the original owners, which is the shul, they plan one day to return. So then that location has the same level of kedusha that it had before. Asur. And my taimu because b'kedusha say koi, because it remains with its kedusha.
So what's the difference between Magura, Mashkuna, it's just...
Same, two different ways of renting or leasing. Maybe Mashkina was...
Mortgage, you probably hit the right way.
I think what Mashkina was is that there's a loan, and eventually they know that when the loan will be paid up, they're going to go back to that property. No, it's if the community plans to, like here we have a shul. So if we are leasing it out, question is, can we lease it out to anyone? Now there's so many other dinim that we have to speak about, and that is that a Chabad house, and this is a Chabad house, right? Lechatchila, it's multi-purpose room. There's a much lower level of kedusha. It's not a location only designated for davening or learning. If that would have been the case, there's a lot of restrictions. Lechatchila, it's a place for fabrengen, it's a place for gathering. All right, that's a whole different thing. But let's say you have a bona fide location in Yik, you have the shul. There's a lot of covet, it's only a shul. When they rent it out, you cannot rent it out and make a party there. It's a shul, it's a holy place. If they were to sell it, even only by the trustees, that's what we're learning here, then the people that go there are not bound by its kedusha.
That's what I wanted to ask. All of this halach is also for Beis Medrash or for strictly Beis Knesset?
No, Beis Medrash, Beis HaKnesses. If we'll have time, there's a machloikis in the Gemara whether a Beis HaKnesses has more kedusha than a Beis which one has more kedusha. There's a machloikis. They're definitely different. Certain halachas of Beis HaKnesses is holier. In a Beis HaKnesses officially, you may not even speak a word of choil. You can only go there to daven. In a place that's designated only for davening. A place that's davening and learning, there are less restrictions, but some people argue it's even holier. Let's read weiter. Livni nami, livni means bricks of a shul. Chilufinu or vezabninu. If the case of our Mishnah, if only the trustees, they exchange these bricks for something else, or if they sold them, then the person who got the bricks is not bound to say, "Oh, these bricks may only be used for holy things." No, shari. But oizoifinu, if the shiva tuvei ho'ir, they loaned the bricks, it's a loan, then asur. Why asur? Because the kedusha fully remains in that item, herst. And now the person who borrowed it, if so Chabad Sola, they lent it to Chabad of the village. No problem. Because they're also going to use it for a shul. No, don't say asur. Asur means that the recipient is bound by the kedusha that this item has. Now, if they're going to use it for something holy, if it's going from a shul to a shul, there's not a problem. But if you want to use something mundane, then again, nachamol. If it's done by the trustees in the public, not a problem. If it's done by the trustees, but not done in public, then we are differentiating whether the original owners planned to get it back or whether it was a final sale versus a loan. Okay. Hanamili, however, this whole idea that bricks have kedusha is only if the bricks were at least once used. Ba'atiksa, which means it came from the actual building, which means it was already imbued with holiness. Aval b'chadata, but if it's brand new bricks means that the shul they're going to build. They have bricks that was not yet built in. It was designated to be used, but it was never used yet. Then leis lanba, there's no kedusha status at all. Isn't that subject to the machloikis whether hazmana yem milsa, whether hazmana lav milsa? Vafil man domer hazmana milsa. Hazmana means is designation consequential. Designation is consequential. Zaktanein hanamili. It's only if the item that you designated to be used is ready for immediate use. Let me just say this by heart. So if you have, let's say, tachrichen, that's ready to be used. Hazmana milsa means that all of these halachas, that anything that's used by the mason, we cannot have any hana. Even though these shrouds were never used, hazmana milsa. What about the thread that's designated to make the shrouds? So it's one step removed from being used. Even though hazmana milsa, you can use the threads. Same thing with the brick. The brick itself, what's the brick? The brick is to go into the building is going to be used. Even the building, it's one step removed. That's why we don't care if the bricks, even though they were designated, there's no kedusha at all. If there's already a woven garment, shrouds, again the key is that it's ready. It's one step away of it being used. If you subscribe to hazmana milsa, then it's asur bahana, even though it wasn't used yet. Aval hachi, but over here by the bricks, it's ketivila arigdami. It's like you're having threads that are designated to be used to weave the tachlichen. That those threads could be used for any other thing. What are you talking about, Hazmana Milsa? No, you were mizaminit to make the beged, and then the beged is not yet. The beged then is going to be used. It's one step removed. And Velakalamanda Omar, no one agrees that Hazmana Milsa on that level. Final topic, Matanem, same thing, same case of the Mishnah, my friends. That the townspeople, I can just see the trustees gifted the shul to someone, not in public. So again, the question will be, did the Kedusha go away or didn't go away? So here machlekes, Pligabot, there's already a machlekes here. Aside of the machlekes over there in that community, chutzpah, imagine they gifted it. No, that's what we're saying. I hope I'm clear. The whole question is whether the Kedusha is in there or not. Exactly. So Pliga Ravach v'Ravina, one of them says, Asir, that the Kedusha in that item remains. And the other one says, no, it went away. Now what's the why? Man the Asar, because he says, Bahai Tifka Kedusha, so how did the Kedusha leave? Now 1 second, Shlomo, don't be so shocked. We just learned now that even in the case of the Mishnah, even if you don't have both the trustees and the people, we just learned that a sale, if the original owners, if the trustees don't plan to go back, then the recipient, there's no Kedusha there. With a caveat, again, we say this in the intro. There's no Kedusha, but they can't do Dvarim Bezuyim in that location. You can't make it into a latrine. Can't do that. You can't even make it into a bathhouse. People go ungarbed in there. But other than that, it's choil. But at least there was a sale. Here, it's just a gift. So the Kedusha remains. Which means the recipient, by the way, the gift is a gift. The trustees have power. But the recipient, you know what he can do with that place? Only have a shul. There's nothing else. In other words, all of the Kedusha is there. Circuit use. Thank you. Uman desharei. Why? It's exchanged on what? Why did the trustees give it as a gift? Because they benefited from that person. They wouldn't have given it to him. So so therefore, a gift is like a sale because it's an exchange of some prior or hopeful post favor.
How about putting somebody's name on a building in a shul? You name a shul after X, like that Jacob is called the Schoenfeld Hall.
Yeah. What's the question? There's nothing to get to our topic.
Is it like their owner?
No, of course not. Of course not. Of course they're not the owner. They are the owner of the naming. So now the question is, can you give it to someone else? Can you change the name? I was in a yeshiva where you had this old boards in memory of with the little light bulbs. You know, these old, they had these copper, and it was old. It was already there probably for 50 years, and there was not enough room, so they were selling honors. They didn't all fit. And every now and then, a yid with a white beard would go and screw off one and put in the other because that donor was going to come to make sure that when he comes in, his name should be on. Oh, I remember that. Okay, let's go right. Now, this is the final. These are such big topics. And by the way, they are interrelated. Tashmish mitzvah, tashmish kedusha. Tashmish mitzvah, accessory for any mitzvah not connected to scripture. That accessory doesn't continuously have kedusha connected to it in the context of you can't discard it, you have to bury it if it's not usable. Tashmish kedusha means that even if it's a pasala mezuzah, since it was an accessory for a mitzvah in the category of scripture, even after it's not kosher, all of the kedusha remains, and therefore you have to be goines. Goines means you have to hide it. It means you have to bury it. That's the topic. Oh, and just a final point. Therefore, many Rishonim say that a shul must be in the category of tashmish mitzvah, because if it would be in the category of tashmish kedusha, then the whole thing doesn't work. In other words, if I have a mezuzah and the trustees sell it in front of the whole city, what, the buyer can do anything with it other than either using it or burying it? No. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan, Tashmishay Mitzvah, Nizrakim, they can be thrown out. It says in Shulchan Aruch not to throw it out derech b'zoyim. So when our kids talis cotton, or there's some people that have a minig that they're very clean, everything they clean, the only beged that they never clean is the tzitzis for whatever reason. So there, every now and then, if they're clean people, they have to buy a new talis cotton. Then your drawer fills up with old talis. What do you do with it? You can throw it out, put it in a bag and throw it out. Nizrakin, but still, I'm saying, just adding, we don't put it in the garbage with the cholent. Put it in a bag and that can go in the garbage. Tashmishay kedusha, anything connected that was in service of, it was an accessory for scripture, the kedusha never leaves, and nignazim, they have to be buried. Elain tashmishay mitzvah sukkah, after the holiday. Not during the holiday we learned it's asr b'hana, but after Yom Tov. Lulav, after Yom Tov. Right? I know there's another Inyan, since it was used for a mitzvah, we burn the chametz with it. But you don't have to do that. Shoifar, tzitzis, ve'elan tamishti kedusham. The luskami, guys, are the bags, are the sacks in which they would put sfarim. So I see sfarim, accessory to sfarim. Sfarim itself, tefillin, mezuzos, the tik of a sefer Torah. Tik l'chayr is the Sfardik. Mitbachos is the Ashkenazic l'chayr. The tik is like the box. V'nartek shal tefillin, the bag, your tefillin bag. And the Ritzuos, great example. I used to say that hi kursaya, let's touch the bima. Since most people don't put the Sefer Torah directly on the bima, they put a beautiful Ashkenazic velvet cover on top, and on top of that goes the Sefer Torah. So he thought that the bima itself is called the tashmish, the kedusha, so it's not bound with this. I thought that tashmish, and therefore v'shari. Shari means you can throw it away. However, given the chazina, since I saw the moisvei alave sefer Torah, that sometimes the cover was not there, so therefore they put the sefer Torah directly on it. I changed my position. Amina, that tashmish the kedushu v'asr. You know what? This is amazing. What did we learn in Amud Aleph? The Rechov Ha'ir. Rechov Ha'ir. It's only used on occasion. So that's a machlokes tanoim. Here we are going with the side, like our Mishnah, even though we pass like that, that a bima is considered bona fide tashmish the kedusha because sometimes it's directly used for the sefer Torah. For Amar Rava, I know it's late. Very good. That's called tashmishay mitzvah. That's tashmishay mitzvah tzemach because it's a menorah.
Of course, it's not mentioned. We know.
And Chanukah is good. And Chanukah is not mentioned in the Mishnah. Well, the Gemara. Hi prisa. Prisa means the curtains in the Aron Kodesh. Now, guys, I have to just break the news that this is clearly a Sfardik Aron Kodesh. The Sfardik Aron Kodesh has the curtain inside. Our Aron Kodesh has the curtain outside, and that's very negea. So, what is that curtain? Very nice. So there are exceptions. So we have the curtain. The curtain is a tashmish, the tashmish. But since when the curtain was inside, sometimes when they would put the Sefer Torah on the inside, they would put it on the curtain. They would fold the curtain inside and have it on the curtain. I mean, since sometimes the curtain was used directly for the Sefer Torah, it's also tashmish kedusha. High Pidis and tashmish the tashmishu, which makes it less bounding. Afterwards you can discard it if you have to. But given the chazina, since I saw the ayfila that sometimes they bend it, uman chasifrei lavei amina tashmish kedusha v'asin. One more. Rama Rava hi teivusa. You have an ark, the irfat that fell apart. So you have pieces of the Aron Kodesh. So me'abda teva zutrase. If you want to rebuild another ark, you're going to lose some of the wood. It broke. You'll make a smaller ark. That's for sure okay. But if you want to make even a stender, now a stender, chavra halkap, a stender sometimes was used for a sefer Torah, but you're moedin. It's not used as often as the ark. Asir. I know it's late and this is so beautiful, but we have to stop over here to be continued. I'll try to learn quicker tomorrow.